It's a little loud. Welcome to the Senate Judiciary Committee. And I'm going to start by asking one of our freshmen who I did not give any heads up. Which one should I do, Sky? Ed? Yeah. Senator Setzler, if you'll please open us up in a word of prayer.
Mr. Chairman, pray with me, please. Dear Heavenly Father, we humble ourselves before you and just thank you for our ability to serve. Pray, Lord God, that we would serve with humility. Lord, it says in your word, if we would humble ourselves before your mighty hand, you'd exalt us at the proper time. And I just pray that everybody here would serve with humility, with goodness, with care for justice, and that all the deliberations here would be glorifying to you and we please you in all that we do. Now and for all the meetings for the rest of this session, we pray this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Senator. And yes, he's already talking as much as he did in the House on this committee. It's a little bit shorter so far. Well, welcome to, some of y'all are laughing way too much. Welcome to the 2023 session. I'm still here, but we have some new members of the committee. Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to start by recognizing some of the people that we have working with the committee who are working as we speak. And then I'm going to go around and let each senator say a few words as well. First off, Sky Park is back with us again, our admin for this session. And she runs everything, manages everything that you see happening in here. She's in charge. And we also have now Hannah Holcomb, who's a junior. I thought she was a sophomore. A junior at Georgia College State University is our aide. Say hello, Hannah. Stand up.
Hi, everyone.
She's the aide for the committee. And then we have Stephen Antalis, who is a recent graduate from SMU Law School, as our legal aide. Where's Stephen? Say hello, Stephen. Working for the committee. And then for Senate Press, Rachel Moore will be working for us for the committee. And in Senate Research, Kaylee Maxwell, who's not here today, but will be our Senate Research analyst this year. And lastly, our Ledge Counsel for the session has changed. It's Paul Higbee. He'll be joining us with Ledge Counsel. Thank you, Paul. So I will briefly, and we'll start on this end, and I will ask you to introduce yourself. Keep it short. What I'd like for you to do, though, is to tell everybody, obviously introduce yourself, where you're from, but tell everybody something about your background that will make you an asset to this committee. And so if you're a lawyer, it should be easy. It's something about your practice and what you do. But if you're a doctor, it may be a little more challenging. We'll start with you, Senator Watson.
Yes.
If it's been expunged, don't bring it up.
Okay. Thank you so much. Ben Watson, State Senator from Savannah, District 1, and I am I was 4 years in the House, which may make me good or bad relating to the judiciary, and 8 years in the Senate. And what would make me good for the Judiciary Committee? I mean, I think just having a non-lawyer on the committee and having non-legal background, maybe having a healthcare slant gives me a different perspective. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, one of our new folks, Senator Hodges. Your mic 14.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Hodges. I'm new senator. Been here, I guess this is my fourth week from the 3rd District, which is the Georgia coast. And I guess I'm not a lawyer. I'm a banker. And I think 48 years as a banker, I've been fending off lawyers for 48 years. So, and I've also been told by all of my clients over the years, there are two types of people in the world to help make sure you don't get anything done. One's a banker, the other's a lawyer. So maybe that gives me some qualification for being here. But I'm honored to be here. I'm honored to serve the people of my district and my state.
Thank you. Before we go to the governor's folio, when I said your last name, I realized one of the rules as chair, at least I saw Jesse Stone do this, is you always suck up to all the judges that visit you in these committees. And we have a judge from our Court of Appeals, Judge Ken Hodges. When I said your name, I thought about this in the back. Thank you for joining us here today.
I'm here to monitor my cousin.
Are y'all related?
Distant cousin.
Okay, I didn't realize that. And Leader Hatchett, if you will, when you start, you have a local judge I think you want to introduce as well. So are you Mike 13? 12. Okay, go ahead.
I've got Judge Chan Caldell here, Mountain Judicial Circuit Superior Court Judge. He's also a pretty good neighbor of mine, too. So welcome, Judge. Glad to have you here. No, I don't think it'd be very distant cousins, yeah. But I'm Bo Hatchett. I'm an attorney up in Northeast Georgia. I work at McDonald and Cody, starting my second term, and I look forward to serving again on the Judiciary Committee.
All right, thank you. And our pro tem now in the Senate, Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be here with you. And so I'm John Kennedy. I represent the 18th District, which is 6 counties in middle Georgia around the Macon area. I practice law in my daytime job and do mostly commercial litigation. And the one thing I could think of, Mr. Chairman, that may make me extremely qualified to serve on this committee in the vein of sucking up would be the great tutelage of serving under you, Mr. Chairman, for the last 2 years under your chairmanship. It's just been an education that I really can't describe.
That's true. That's true. But if you could describe it, I'm sure you would. You'd like to take a shot at it? Or? Okay. All right. That would. All right. Senator Cowsert. Now we share Walton County together, so now
Yeah.
part of my delegation.
And I would say that probably the highlight of my career has been being your vice chairman for the last 4 years. It's
I didn't know you had that job.
been several
still the
different
vice chair?
chairmen I've been. I think so.
Oh, okay. Oh, you are. Okay.
I see Judge Caldell. We've practiced law against each other, me in front of me. He's his job as a Superior Court judge now giving him gray hair. He didn't used to have that a few years ago. Mine comes from practicing law. I'm in my 40th year of practicing law. And we have an 8-person law firm in Athens, mostly trial work, predominantly defense side of the coin. Represent an awful lot of insurance companies, do business litigation, estate litigation, small amount of criminal with the knuckleheads in Athens, students that get in trouble. So I've kind of been around the block on a lot of different areas. We currently have cases pending in 33 different counties in Georgia out of our firm, all the way from down to Macon, over to Atlanta, up to North Carolina, and Hiawassee, and down as far as Columbia County, Augusta, and Milledgeville. So it's a wide swath of territory, and the last I kept track, I had tried somewhere between 450 jury trials in my career. So I've been in the trenches and applied these different rules that we look at every day in this committee. Looking forward to a fun year.
All right. Thank you, Senator Cowsert. Vice Chairman Cowsert. Senator Parent, are you Mike 6?
Yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Senator Elena Parent out of DeKalb County. Very honored to be a member of this committee again. I've done 8 years in the Senate. I did 2 in the House. And in my legal career, I've spent the vast majority of that time practicing securities litigation, defense side. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Senator Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Harold Jones, represent Augusta District 22. I'm also a former solicitor for Augusta, Georgia, and currently one of 3 lawyers that represents the Sheriff's Department. And I also have my local judge. We have Judge Danny Craig here, who's going to be presenting on SB 5, and he's also a former district attorney too, Mr. Chair, former DA.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Senator Rett.
I'm Senator Rett. Everybody calls me Doc. This is about my 4th year on this committee. Been serving about 8 years in the Senate from Cobb County. Spent 6 years, my first 6 years, with Senator Elena Parent as a suite mate. Everything I've learned from her. She's not my cousin. The senator to my left from the 37th, he's not my cousin either. But what qualifies me to be on this committee is that him and we both have our pictures hanging up in the post office in Cobb County.
Yeah. All right. Last but not least, Senator Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Ed Setzler represents Senate District 37, West Cobb, South Bartow County. I'm a freshman senator. Have served 18 years in the House. Served for 18 years on the House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee. 13 of those years I chaired a subcommittee the subcommittee for general and juvenile law. So I have a really, really bad reputation in this Capitol for having long, grueling subcommittee hearings, but of which the chair has direct knowledge. But I'm honored to serve on this committee. I think this is the heart and soul of what our legislature does, and glad to be part of the team.
All right, thank you very much. And one thing that I told my staff the first day we started, our number one job with this committee is to make sure that when a bill is presented in here and someone says the bill does this, that if it leaves this committee, it actually does that. You know, the next issue may be the policy, whether or not you want to support it, but that was why I had everybody say something about their background. Everybody brings something different to the table. But our main goal here is to make sure we ask a lot of questions and go through every single line to make sure that we get it right. Obviously, stuff will come back. I've had to go back and file bills already to fix things that I've done wrong. And that's part of the process and how it works. But I think that's the number one job with this committee. And I appreciate the chance to get to serve with everybody again this year. So with that, we will go on the agenda, and we'll start with Senate Resolution 32. Senator Harbison, if you want to come up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. I appreciate being here to present a resolution, an urging resolution from our city in Columbus,
Can you
Georgia.
pause for 1 second? I forgot
Yes, sir.
something very important. Speaking of making sure we get stuff right, we don't have any Senate rules yet. I guess we should pass rules before we hear bills. So in your folder, I got too carried away. On the left side is a copy of the proposed committee rules. I will tell you they're the same rules we had last time, probably the same rules from before then as well. Does anybody have any questions or discussion on the rules? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
So we have a motion to adopt the rules as written by Senator Parent and a second by Senator Rhett. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. It carries unanimously. All right, now am I good? Okay. I'll let you start over again.
That's all right, Mr. Chairman. Take your time. Thank you very kindly. And as I said, this is an urging resolution from members of the City Council in Columbus, Georgia, and the mayor there. They're having an issue whereby we're bordered right there with Alabama, Phoenix City, Alabama, and sometime, I guess, in situations with hot pursuit or rendering assistance to other citizens and things like that, there may arise a situation where our officers from Columbus, Georgia are not covered by immunity. And this is an effort to get the Attorney General to try to strike some kind of agreement with Alabama to come up with something that will be serving both the officers in Alabama and Georgia with the curtain of with some immunity. If I may read a paragraph from the mayor, it reads, border cities like Columbus, Georgia have a unique situation due to our proximity to a neighboring state. One challenge is the tremendously increased exposure to the city of Columbus anytime a Columbus City vehicle crosses the river and enters Alabama. The increased exposure exists due to a lack of sovereign immunity afforded for Georgia vehicles in Alabama. Specifically, with regard to the Columbus Police Department, this creates a hardship. As a benefit, Columbus police officers are allowed to take their patrol cars home with them. Officers who reside in Alabama cannot. With such difficulty in recruiting and retaining officers, as we know, this lack of benefit to officers living in Alabama can make a real difference. Additionally, officers who live in Alabama cannot go on duty immediately. They must first travel to their vehicle in order to emerge in emergency response and other law enforcement activities. So while you're recruiting and you're trying to bring officers in, this is one impediment to that, and this is an effort to do that. But primarily, the big deal is for immunity for officers who have to go, perhaps even in hot pursuit. And I thought that hot pursuit was already covered, but I'm not sure about that. So I think this is an effort to get the Attorney General to try to come to some kind of resolution for that situation.
All right, thank you, Senator. And since we are urging the Attorney General to negotiate and do this, have you had any conversations with the Attorney General's office about this?
We have not, and I would assume that our attorney in Columbus, Georgia, made some calls to Attorney General Carr's office to try to come to some kind of agreement about how this would work, but clearly that would be on his, to his discretion.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the committee? Senator Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to orient me to this, so we've got the legal framework already set up. It's just about working out the details that we need the AG to, or is this something he's going to negotiate, bring back to us, and we will enact in statute?
It's the latter.
Okay.
Bring back to you all.
Okay.
Right. And then it goes to, there's another committee that's existing in every state, I believe, that would ultimately start passing bills. And they would, I think after 2/3 or something like that, would become a law nationwide, something to that effect.
Any other questions? All right, nobody else has signed up to speak on the bill. What's the pleasure of the committee? We have a motion to pass by Senator Setzler. We have a second by Senator Cowser. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. It carries unanimously. All right.
Thank you, sir.
We're on to
Appreciate
rules.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right, the next bill on the agenda is Senate Bill 5. Senator Burns. Sure. And Senator Jones is going to go down and join you. I believe both mics will be hot mics. Make sure when you get there, yours is on too, Harold. And while you're getting set up, one thing I did include in the folder, because I know this is going to come up, do we include both of these things? We have a letter that was sent from the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court about the recommendations from the Judicial Council this past year for new judgeships. And I believe additional information was provided. Was this also provided? That's all that you have in your folders from me. So with that, you want to start, Senator Burns? I'll turn it over to both of y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll kick it off. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to request your support for Senate Bill 5. Senator Jones and I are strongly supportive of this action. It would increase the number of judges in the Augusta Circuit from 5 to 6. If you recall, in 2021, the circuit was split, and Columbia County was created. A circuit in Columbia County, Georgia, was created, and the Augusta Circuit was retained to include the county of Richmond and the county of Burke. At that time, we knew that the workload was going to be a major challenge, and we knew that the division of that workload was not going to be equal. So, what we're here today to ask for is to increase the number of judges in the Augusta Circuit from 5 to 6, based upon workload. And again, I thank you for the input from the Judicial Council and the Office of Administrative Courts. And you'll note that there are a ranked order of 8 there, and the Augusta Judicial Circuit is ranked 4. I have also provided for you a handout that gives you the workload information on all of the circuits in Georgia, and I've highlighted those circuits that are impacted by the legislation that you're considering. So the Atlantic Circuit, the Coweta Circuit, and the Daughtry Circuit are all ranked on the council's priority list. And if you'll notice, Columbia is number 4. And I just highlight the fact, Augusta is number 4. I just highlight the fact that currently the Columbia County workload per judge is 0.9, and the Augusta workload is 1.4. If you compare that to the other circuits that are being requested for funding and support, they are all falling in line with the same basic workload between 1.2 and 1.5. So what I'd ask you to do is consider the Augusta Judicial Circuit for an additional judge, recognizing that it's necessary because the workload balance between the Augusta Circuit and the new Columbia Circuit. I'd like to offer an opportunity for my colleague, Senator Jones, to address the issue. And then we have with us today Chief Judge Danny Craig from the Augusta Circuit, and I'd like to ask that he be allowed to address the committee.
We'll start with Senator Jones, and we have some questions for both of y'all.
Okay.
So, Senator Jones.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just also add that not only is the workload increased, we also have a differential as far as experience is concerned. Once we did this circuit split, the experience of our judges actually went down tremendously in the Augusta Judicial Circuit, where now the Columbia Circuit has, I think, an average years of, they have a total years of 50 years experience on that particular bench, where now the Augusta Judicial Circuit only has a total of 26, with 14 of those years coming with Judge Craig. Other than that, we have 2 judges that only have 1 year experience and 2 other judges that have 5 years experience. So the Judicial Circuit split not only increased the workload, but it also decreased the amount of experience that exists on our particular bench to handle an increased workload, but also to handle the fact that our accountability courts, our mental health courts, was going strong, but the key player in that, or the key judge in that, Judge Blanchard, he actually moved over to Columbia County. So not only do we have an increased workload, and not only do we have a decreased experience as far as our judges are concerned, they now are going to have to basically handle the accountability court aspect of it, which would be new to them. Judge Blanchard has over 20 years of experience, so you're going to be replacing him as far as these accountability courts are concerned also. I also would point out that we actually rank 3rd as far as serious felonies are concerned. And serious felonies in Georgia would be like a murder, a rape, armed robbery. We're 3rd, I believe, and that's behind Atlanta Circuit and also Stone Mountain Circuit. They have 20 judges in Atlanta and 10 in Stone Mountain. Augusta Judicial Circuit is 3rd now with 346 serious felonies. So now you also see that not only is it just the workload that you can kind of see in front of you, but put it into context that you're dealing with some of the most serious felonies in Georgia, with a group of lawyers that are by and large inexperienced and trying to fill in those particular gaps. And so I'd also point out that certainly we see how the normal the Judicial Council has ranked them, but I also would say this, that the judicial split that we talk about was one that the judges were not necessarily in favor of. So this is not a situation that they're getting what they asked for, so to speak. This was us. And I was in favor of it, but this was not a situation where they were saying, yes, we must split, and they're just getting what they asked for. To some extent, this was driven by those who are not in the judiciary, quite frankly. And so we kind of put that on to them. And that's why we're here today asking to go ahead and pass this to get that 6th judge. And we'll open up for any questions.
Question from Senator Hatchett.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a little familiar with this process because we recently had to do it last year in the Mountain Judicial Circuit. And one of the things that was important to get it done is to actually have that position put into the budget. Obviously, I'm going to be in support of Senator Jones, Senator Burns with this appointment, but is it in the budget right now?
Currently, it is not in the budget. We've had discussions with the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, and we will continue to have those discussions. We believe that we can secure funding for this if we can get the support of the committee. The reality is we would wait another year to have this judge added under a normal cycle. And we believe that the resources would be prudently invested in this cycle to alleviate the challenges in the Augusta Circuit. So I'm happy to work with the Appropriations Committee and Chairman Tillery and the Appropriations Committee in the House and the Governor's Office, but I believe we can make a strong case that we need this judge this year, not 2 years from now.
And that was just my one concern is I'd hate to create it and then the funds not be there. So thank you.
Any other questions at this time for the author and the co-author of the bill from the committee? Senator Calzert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't understand this chart that we have that's the ranking system. I don't see it ranked in numbers.
This chart
Yes, Senator, that one.
the document that was provided by the...
The one that you were showing me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
All right.
okay.
This chart was the 2020 Superior Court workload assessment, and it's the latest workload assessment we have available. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And what it allows us to do is look at all of our Supreme Court judicial circuits across the state and get an idea of the number of judges, the caseload per judge, the workload value, and then the workload per judge. So it allows a comparison.
What's the workload value mean? Translate that
I'm
for
gonna
me.
defer to the judge and to the attorney on that. That might be best addressed in that vein.
Yeah, I would refer to Judge Craig.
Let's defer, if we may, Mr. Chairman, can we defer to Judge Craig?
Yeah, do you have any other questions you want to go and bring Judge up?
1.4, that basically tells you that each judge in the circuit is doing the work of 1.4 judges. And naturally, of course, we would all strive to have one judge do the work of one judge and not 1.4 judges. And one thing that really is not so apparent from even that number of 1.4 is the trajectory here. So if I can go back to that, the circuit split, Superior Court judges have to live in the circuit where they work. And so when the circuit was split, then the 3 judges who resided in Columbia County were assigned to Columbia County, even though that basically meant that each one judge in Columbia County was doing the work of 0.9 judges in Columbia County. Columbia County became overjudged. Richmond County, or Richmond and Burke County, and the Augusta Circuit became underjudged, and with a trajectory that was rather alarming, because it's not just the issue of experience, it's just that the workload itself is 1.4 and rising, whereas Columbia County is likely 0.9 and decreasing. But you had no choice. You couldn't divide a judge.
Yeah.
Not even Solomon could do that.
Is it based totally on the case number
It
of
is,
cases?
yes. The Judicial Workload Assessment Committee does that count. Each judge each year is assigned the task of keeping track of our work over the course of about 6 weeks.
Does the type of case have any impact?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in other words, they're weighted. So,
so
just
these
in
are
the extremes, a
Okay.
death penalty case will be weighted much more than a misdemeanor case.
Yeah, I was looking at Atlantic Circuit, which has 4 judges. This says there's enough work there for 5 judges, but it says the average number of cases is 1,501, and down at the bottom, the statewide average is 1,605. So I'm thinking, wow, these guys got less than the statewide average, but according to this chart, they need a whole nother judge. I just didn't follow the mathematics on that.
Well, I think, as I say, the more accurate measure is per the circuit, so you can actually see what the particular circuit's needs are, as opposed to just the statewide average of the number of cases.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to do, and Judge, I'll let you come back up and give your testimony. I'd like to bring up Jeffrey Thorpe from the Judicial Council, Administrative Office of the Courts, if you will, because, and I want you to share with the committee on this for a minute. I went to this meeting last year, have a seat, Judicial Council, and what I witnessed was Judicial Council all coming together, looking at data and voting and ranking the circuits. And it was a democratic process where everybody voted and really hashed it out in there. People left not happy, some people left happy. But for better or worse, it's the way we did it. And at least the last couple years, I don't know about historically how this has gone, the legislature has tried to rely upon Judicial Council to have those debates internally and then come up with a list versus us having to have every senator from their circuit coming asking for a judgeship, making the case, because I'm sure it would be very popular back home if we all got new judges for our circuits. And so best we can to avoid having that become a legislative process, we, for better or worse, have relied upon what you do and what your group does. So if you could spend a second to answer Senator Calvert's questions, if you have more to add there, just tell us briefly about the process.
Okay, so it's our analysis is based on a 3-year average of your caseload data. And as the judge said before, each particular case type is weighted by a different set of minutes. And that is based on a study conducted by the National Center for State Courts, which is a time and motion study. And so the time and motion study assigns each category a different minute value. So where you will see a average cases per judge being 1,500, another one being 2,300, but one might say that their workload value is 0.9, and another one says their workload values of 1.4, will mean that some there are more heavy-hitting cases like your serious felonies, and maybe you had 1 to some counties 3 death penalty cases that year. Those are higher weighted values, so they would need more assistance. We do a 3-year average to try to weed out those heavy hitting cases. So that one case doesn't equal 4,000 minutes, but it's divided to 0.3 times that 4,000 minutes. And that is our way of trying to make it as clean and easy as possible. And although I stay away from trying to do a projection of what your cases will look like, because anything can change. Y'all could decide to change a law. You could change a proceeding. Something can get decriminalized. Anything can happen there. So we try to stay away from those projections. So doing a 3-year average is our best attempt to try to give you an idea of what it would look like. So if you need help this year, the likelihood you're going to need help next year and the year after that.
All right, any questions for Mr. Thorpe while we have him? Senator Cowsert.
Does your council ever recommend a reduction in the number of judges in a circuit? I'm not being funny, because there's some of these that are 0.7. You got guys that don't have enough to do comparatively.
Okay, so a couple of years ago, that question was asked by this body for us to review that. And so our policy does look at a review for a reduction in judgeships. Ideally, if you're below 0.9, so 0.8 or lower, you would be one of discussion that we will look at. And there are many factors as to why someone could be under that threshold of 1.9. Case counting is not an easy process. There are a lot of legal definitions that have to go in, different ways of counting things. So we try our hardest, with the support of this council, to create a position, me, to go to these courts and actually count these cases and see if they're in the best categories they possibly can be. So even though we look at that, it's not as simple as you get away with this judge this year because you don't need that. We also look at the idea, yes, it is at you are 0.8, but if we remove that judgeship, then you go back to 1.2, then we're just in the endless cycle of needing to add a judge and then reduce a judge, add a judge and reduce a judge.
I'm asking because I've been here 16 years and there's not yet been a bill, anybody asking to reduce a judgeship in exchange for increases elsewhere. I'm not saying that we need to, but we got a lot of parts of the state that are losing population. But I get it that a Superior Court judge is one of the hardest jobs out there, and you need 2 in a circuit. So if one of them has to recuse themselves, et cetera. So it's not a linear function, but I was just wondering if there's ever any consideration, because this looks like, according to your guys' records, you need 258 judges and you don't have it 216. So y'all would like us to give you another 50 judges, which would increase the number by 25%.
Well, as fun as that would be to add that many more judges on the bench, this is why we do the process. Needs change every year. Every 5 to 7 years, we do something called the time and motion study, as I mentioned beforehand, that reevaluates those minute values with the issues of COVID that happened. You know, the nature of how court is taking place has changed. We do a lot more video conferencing in courts now, and that comes with its own issues with internet and connectivity issues. Sometimes court takes a lot longer, sometimes it doesn't, because you don't have to worry about wrangling up 50 million people. You can all put them on a Zoom call. So we recently just did that study this year and changed and looked at these minute values, and for many of them they actually went up. It did take a little longer. So with the combination of those new minute values plus the 3-year average of what the caseload looked like, we're looking roughly around that same amount of judges still.
I ask one final follow-up. Is there a national standard of what the caseload ought to be for a Superior Court judge? I mean, we're comparing within our state. How do we stack up with other states? Are we over wearing our judges out, or just give me an idea?
I knew there was going to be a question you were going to ask that I didn't know. But no, I don't know of any national standard. Georgia is very unique in the way that we handle our cases and handle our courts and where those proceedings happen. I'm sure if I was to sit down and really look at the overall cases per judge across the states and look at those the different types of cases and kind of do that long-term study, then I'm sure there will be a nice standard, and maybe my friends at the National Center do have that, but as of right now I don't really have that answer for you.
Thank you.
Senator Sessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It appears, if I'm reading this right, that Augusta actually needs 2 judges. If you look at this, the study says judge workload value 6.8 is the need, and 5 is the current number of judges. I guess first question is, are there other circuits that you know of they're asking for judges this year as well, to your knowledge?
I was told that there was funding for at least 3. I'm not sure. I know that Doherty Judicial Circuit's on y'all's schedule for tomorrow, or the House schedule for tomorrow. I assume that it would be at least Doherty and Coweta and Atlantic Circuits. Thank you. You all know better than I do today.
Because the reason I asked the question, I mean, there clearly is a need. You're 2 judges short. There's one circuit that's 5 judges short, 2 that are 4 judges short, and 2 that are about 3 judges short. So I just, there does seem to be a need. I'm just trying to understand the context of everything we're being asked. Could this be done in a holistic request for more than one? Are these done one-off?
So I can talk about the methodology behind that and kind of what the Judicial Council policy on that standpoint is that we evaluate each of the judgeship requests as individuals. So even if someone did need 2 and they requested for 2, and we've had that in the past, we would evaluate that first judgeship, and then we will look at it as if that judgeship was added and see if you still will be over that. Thus, that judge year value looks at, you see it 6.8, so needing 2 more judges. It looks at it what it is right then and there with those 5 judges. But if you add on that 6th judge, it changes how you look at those overall judges. Now you're dividing the case white by those 6s versus just those 5.
Sure. No, in that analysis, I mean, dividing the total cases by 6 puts you below the average caseload. That doesn't bother me because you're looking at growth. I'm just asking the question: if some need 5, 2 need 4, 2 need 3, as long as we're not ignoring those folks, I don't know that there's an issue.
The best way that we've always just looked at it is to look at it as an individual judge by judge basis. To say the put all the judges that it would say right then and there, I can't say that will drop, because very well you add those 3 judges there and it might drop them down to a 0.8, and then you're looking at that saying, well, we should probably reduce this again. So it's always going back and forth. Even in a situation where, remarkably crime just stopped in a county, and then you funded 6 new judgeships in that one area, and then somehow some magic pill happened and people were acting right, then you wouldn't need those many people there in that, and you'll try to see about relocating them at that point in time.
If you're an investor in that pill, I want to buy stock in your company. So
Everything can be done with numbers eventually. I'll figure it out. I'll let you know, Joe.
Senator Hatchett.
Mr. Chairman, I was just going to try to address Senator Setzler's concern here. A lot of these numbers are outdated because I know the Mountain Judicial Circuit here, this is from 2020. And, we have 3 judges now. I know Blue Ridge added a judge last session. So you're saying, you're concerned about those circuits not being addressed. A lot of those were last year. Yeah.
Senator Rhett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to make a comment that even though the value might be 0.8, that you have to look at the type of court case that figure into the value workload per judge. Just like Senator Harold Jones said, it could be rape, murder, mayhem. That's a little more higher up the scale. So that number can be misleading.
One thing I would like for somebody to share is what it actually cost us in the state budget per judge, and that includes when it comes to not just the judge and their staff, but also the prosecutors and I believe public defenders that go with each judge, any other cost, and in addition to that, what's the local costs as well for the county?
So there was an estimated somewhere around 600,000. That number is always a going number. There's always differences in, county need. And it's always a moving target. So I can't tell you exactly, but I do know it's upward of 600.
And Senator Burns, do you know how much it would cost to add this new judgeship for the Augusta Circuit?
I know that the estimate on the budget for the other 3 circuits is around $428,000. I don't believe that that's the total cost. I believe that's a partial cost.
Just the cost of the judge.
Just the cost of the judge, not the cost of the additional support team around that judge. I'd like to just point out to the committee, we're not asking that any of the recommendations of the council, the Judicial Council of Georgia, be changed. We're asking the committee to recognize the unique situation that Richmond County and the Augusta-Richmond circuit's in because of, number one, the split, and number two, the issue of violence and violent crime in that area. So that if you look at the Augusta circuit as an entity, it needs an additional judge today to deal with the challenges of today. And we would ask that you support the legislation to allow us to advocate for the funding.
The only challenge I give you that is we have Judicial Council has you number 4.
Yes.
And so we obviously have not heard from these other 3 circuits yet, anybody sponsoring a bill yet on this side that I've seen dealing with those. But if we're going to follow what Judicial Council is doing, then where do we stop? You know, is 4 the right number? I don't know. And then the bigger question is, are we going to put it in the budget? Right now, it's not. My understanding, I think someone said, is the top 3 in the budget? Does anybody know for sure?
That's my current understanding.
Right. And so if we're going to fund it, then that's obviously we can figure out from a policy standpoint where we stop. But it's a bigger question as to whether we're going to go off this list. So are we going to basically, are we asking to add to the budget, and do you have support to get this add to the budget? It's a question down the road to be answered. Any other questions at this time for Mr. Thorpe from the committee? I'll let you go. All right.
Thank you.
And then we brought you up and put you back down. Judge Craig, a chance to provide your testimony. I'll turn it over to you.
Well, you pretty much covered it. I think that this is not in any way intended to be sour grapes, but when you say we should pay close attention to the Judicial Workload Assessment Committee's work, I totally agree with you. And I was 2 years ago asking that before you would vote on a circuit split, that you would look at the Judicial Workload Assessment Committee's recommendation. It turns out, as a matter of fact, that we were just still a work underway with regard to that, and it was only a month later when they did return their recommendation, and their recommendation was that the most efficient use of judicial resources would have been for the Augusta Circuit to remain a 3-county circuit, Richmond, Columbia, and Burke. But that was too late. The legislature had already divided the circuit. And so, as I say, this makes our situation unique and completely nuanced from the situation, because I would be the first to say to you, as I did 2 years ago, please let the Judicial Workload Assessment Committee's work guide you. Unfortunately, I was not heard 2 years ago in that regard, and now we have a situation that is dire, and we, as Senator Burns said, we didn't bring it about, but we owe it to the people of the Augusta Judicial Circuit, who happen to be a hotbed of very serious violent crime, that we finished the work that the legislature started 2 years ago. I hope you don't think of that as sour grapes, because I don't intend it as such.
All right. Thank you, Judge. Any questions for Judge Craig? All right. Any last questions for the author of the bill from the committee? Nobody else signed up to speak on the bill. What I'd like to do is hold this one and let you work in the budget process, Senator, both of y'all. There's no point in us moving this to rules just to sit. The new rules chair might just send it back to us anyway, because we need to make sure we're going to fund this, and that's a decision from the Appropriations Committee. And so I encourage y'all to work with that committee. I have no idea how everybody else in the committee feels. To me, it's a matter of funding. You're number 4 on the list, so if we're going to go to 4 this year, that's maybe a decision we can make in appropriations. But I'd like for you to work that process and come back and let me know how that process is going. And obviously, if we're able to get this in the budget, then we could revisit moving the bill at that time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to work with the Appropriations Committee and see if we can encourage them to resource this dire need. And I want to thank Judge Craig and Senator Jones for their support in this effort. Our goal is to not delay the addition of an additional judge in the Augusta Circuit by a year or more as we move forward. Thank you.
Right.
I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. That's everything we have on the agenda today, and it took us 47 minutes to hear one resolution, one bill we didn't vote on, so it's going to be a long session. With that, we're adjourned.
Today was the easy day.
Some things never change.